Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My wife and I had been living our dream life in Hawaii on the Big Island. We had a nice little house with a guest room that we'd converted from what used to be my home office. The extra space came in handy when friends visited from the mainland. I'd known my friend since college. I'll call her Karen. We'd stayed close over the years, and she'd always been incredibly generous. When my wife and I would visit Oahu where she lived, she'd go all out, special meals, tours of the island. She even let us stay in her beautiful condo overlooking Waikiki Beach for free multiple times. She seemed like the kind of friend you could count on, which is why what happened next caught me completely off guard. One Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Karen calling from San Diego. She explained that she was working as a traveling nurse now and had just received 2 job offers. One position was on the East Coast, and the other was right there on the Big Island where my wife and I lived. The catch was that she needed to make her decision within 30 minutes. She asked if it would be possible for her to stay with us for the 3-month assignment, promising to pay rent, of course. I put her on hold and talked with my wife, who was grading papers at the kitchen table. My wife thought it sounded fine and said it would be nice to see Karen again. The extra rental money would also help with our mortgage payments. I got back on the phone and told Karen she could stay with us, that we'd love to have her. That's when she casually mentioned that her boyfriend would be coming along too. This caught me off guard since we'd just agreed to house one person, not 2. When I questioned her about not mentioning her boyfriend initially, she explained they'd been together for about 8 months and that he couldn't really afford to stay anywhere else. She couldn't bear to leave him behind for 3 months. Then she dropped another bombshell. She'd need to borrow our car because she couldn't afford to rent one, already having a $500 monthly car payment back in California. My head was spinning. She'd just doubled the number of house guests and was now asking to use our car for 3 months. I tried to tell her this was very different from our original discussion, but she brushed off my concerns, saying we were such good friends. She then asked if we drank coffee because she made a 12-cup pot every morning. When I told her we did drink coffee, she seemed satisfied and said she'd see us the following week before hanging up abruptly. When Karen and her boyfriend arrived the following Wednesday, I had to admit he seemed pleasant enough. He thanked us multiple times for letting them stay and offered to help around the house. Karen, on the other hand, immediately started making herself very comfortable. The first major red flag came on day 2. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when Karen wandered in and asked about our nudity policy in the house. I nearly choked on my coffee and asked her to repeat what she'd said. She explained that she liked to walk around naked sometimes, especially when it was hot, and wanted to know if that was acceptable. I told her we'd never really had a nudity policy since it had never come up before, but suggested she keep clothes on in the common areas. She seemed annoyed by this restriction but agreed, though she made it clear she'd definitely be going naked in the guest room and bathroom. By the end of the first week, she'd burned through our entire month's supply of Kona coffee. At $18 a pound, this was becoming an expensive problem. Then I started doing the math on the car situation. The hospital where she'd be working was 60 miles from our house. With her 12-hour shifts, her boyfriend would need to drop her off and pick her up, making 2 round trips every day she worked. I calculated this would put almost 1,000 miles per week on our Honda. When I brought up my concerns about the excessive mileage, Karen dismissed them, saying her boyfriend would take good care of the car. Her boyfriend then mentioned he was hoping to do some fishing while she was at work and would probably stay in town and fish off the pier during her shifts. That's when Karen asked if we knew where they could get some MJ, because her boyfriend liked to smoke when he went fishing. I was stunned and asked if she really wanted to use our car to drive around the island while her boyfriend was smoking pot. She said it was just a little bit and that he was a very careful driver. Her boyfriend chimed in, claiming he never drove while actually high and only smoked when he was fishing. I explained that this was way more than we had agreed to. They were putting almost 1,000 miles a week on our car, going through our expensive coffee and now asking us to help them find drugs. Karen accused us of changing and said we used to be so cool and laid back. My wife finally spoke up, saying we were still laid back, but this wasn't what we had agreed to at all. The argument continued for the next few days. Karen kept saying we were being unreasonable, while my wife and I felt completely taken advantage of. To make matters worse, she complained constantly about our air conditioning not working well enough in the Honda. She griped that the car was uncomfortable and that the AC barely worked, saying it was so hot. I reminded her it was a 15-year-old Honda and that the AC worked fine for around town driving. I suggested that if she wasn't happy with it, she could rent her own car. She repeated that she couldn't afford to rent a car, which prompted me to point out the contradiction with her $500 monthly car payment in California. That's when she finally found alternative housing. A week and a half into their stay, she told us they'd found a little apartment closer to the hospital and would be moving out the next day. When my wife asked about the car situation, Karen said she'd still need to borrow it since the new place didn't come with a car either. I told her that if she wasn't staying with us anymore, she couldn't continue using our car to drive all over the island. She reluctantly agreed to rent a car but expressed her disappointment, saying she thought we were better friends than this. The next day they packed up and left without even saying goodbye properly. For the next 2.5 months, we heard absolutely nothing from her. No text messages, no phone calls, no communication whatsoever. Then one morning I woke up and noticed our Honda was back in the driveway. I hadn't heard from Karen at all, but there was our car returned without any notice. I checked my phone and found a single text message that had been sent at 3 a.m. The message simply read that the car was in our driveway. That was it, no thank you, no explanation, no apology. Just that one cold sentence. I walked outside to inspect the car and found it filthy inside and out. The gas tank was completely empty, and there were fishing hooks and bait containers scattered across the back seat. Sand covered the floor mats, and the whole interior reeked of stale MJ smoke. When I checked the odometer, I discovered she put over 4,000 miles on our car during her stay. The air conditioning, which she'd complained about constantly, was now completely broken. A week later, I received a text from her asking if we could mail her some items she'd accidentally left behind. She wanted us to pay for shipping and handle all the packaging ourselves. When I told her she could arrange to have them picked up or pay for the shipping herself, she called me selfish and said she was disappointed in how our friendship had deteriorated. I never responded to that message. A mutual friend later told me Karen had been bragging on social media about her amazing free vacation in Hawaii, posting pictures of herself at beaches and restaurants during what were supposed to be her work hours. She'd apparently been using our car and hospitality to fund a 3-month island getaway while barely working at the hospital. We never heard from her again, and honestly, that was probably for the best. When our family friend invited us to her lake house last summer, I was excited about what seemed like a perfect weekend getaway. I'd known her for about 5 years through mutual friends. She was the social butterfly of our group, organizing events and get-togethers. She had this way of making everything sound amazing and fun, which is why we all said yes so quickly when she pitched the lake house idea. The invitation came during one of our regular group hangouts. She was scrolling through photos on her phone, showing us pictures of this gorgeous lake house she'd inherited from her grandmother. She told us she had the best idea and suggested we all go to her lake house the following weekend. She made it sound so relaxing, saying we just needed to bring food and good vibes. My friend from college immediately got excited and asked how much we'd need to chip in. Our host brushed off the concern, telling us not to worry about it. She said we should just bring some groceries and split the utilities, promising it would be perfect. The way she described it made it sound like a casual, relaxing weekend where we'd all pitch in equally and just enjoy each other's company. 4 of us agreed to go, me, my college friend, and 2 other people from our extended friend group. We were all in our late 20s, working demanding jobs, and desperately needed a break from city life. Before the trip, she sent us a detailed list of what to bring. I needed to pack my own bedding, towels, and enough food for all my meals. She also asked us to send her money up front for utilities and shared groceries like coffee, eggs, and bread through a payment app. I sent her $60 without thinking twice about it. Everyone else did the same. The lake house was beautiful, nestled right on the water with a private dock and plenty of space for all of us. But the moment we arrived, something felt off. Instead of greeting us and showing us around like a normal host would, she was lying on the couch scrolling through her phone while her two kids ran around screaming. She told us she was glad we were there, then immediately mentioned that the kids hadn't eaten lunch yet and she was exhausted. She asked if someone could whip something up for them. I figured she'd had a long morning getting the place ready for us, so I volunteered to make sandwiches for everyone. But then she started listing off other things that needed to be done. She mentioned that the bathrooms upstairs needed cleaning before anyone could use them, and someone should probably run to the store for more groceries. She also reminded us that the kids needed to go to their swimming lessons in an hour. My college friend and I exchanged looks. This wasn't exactly the relaxing start to the weekend we'd imagined, but we were guests in her home. We divided up the tasks and got to work. That first evening set the tone for the entire trip. While the rest of us cooked dinner, she sat on the porch with a glass of wine, occasionally shouting instructions from her chair. She reminded us not to overcook the chicken and asked someone to keep an eye on the kids while they were near the water. When we sat down to eat the meal we'd prepared, she started complaining about how stressful her life was and how she never got a break. I tried to be sympathetic, but it was hard when she'd been relaxing all day while we did chores. The second day was even worse. She had a whole list of errands that apparently needed to be done, and somehow we all got assigned different tasks. She explained that since we were staying there for free, it would be great if we could pitch in a little more. She needed someone to take the kids to soccer practice, someone else to clean the kitchen from the night before, and the boat dock needed to be hosed down. That's when my college friend finally spoke up and asked what she meant by staying for free, pointing out that we'd all sent money for utilities and groceries. Our host clarified that the money was just for basic costs, and she was providing the house while dealing with all the planning stress. The audacity was breathtaking. We were paying to stay there, bringing our own food, doing all the cooking and cleaning, and chauffeuring her kids around. Meanwhile, she treated us like hired help who should be grateful for the opportunity. By the third day, I was done. I woke up to find a note on the kitchen counter with a list of chores that needed to be completed before we could enjoy lake time. The list included scrubbing the bathrooms, doing laundry, mowing the lawn, and driving her kids to a birthday party an hour away. I found my college friend on the back deck, staring at the same note. She said the situation was insane and that we were supposed to be on vacation. I agreed, telling her I felt like we were paying to be her personal assistants. That's when we made the decision to leave early. We quietly packed our stuff and told the other two friends what we were doing. They were more than ready to escape too. When we loaded our cars, she finally emerged from her bedroom where she'd been resting all morning. She asked where we were going, mentioning that she thought we were having a barbecue that night. I simply told her we decided to head home early and thanked her for having us. She protested, saying there was still so much that needed to be done around the house and asking if we couldn't stay to help out a little more. The entitlement in her voice was unreal. Even when we were leaving, she was trying to guilt us into staying to do more work for her. We drove away without another word. About an hour into the drive home, my phone buzzed with a text from her expressing shock that we couldn't even stay to say goodbye. None of us responded. What was there to say? She'd turned what should have been a fun weekend with friends into an unpaid internship at her personal bed and breakfast. A few months later, she tried to organize another group trip to the lake house. She sent out a group text with the same cheerful energy asking who wanted to do another lake house weekend with the same arrangement. The group chat went completely silent. Not a single person responded. A week later, she sent individual texts to each of us asking why no one seemed interested in another trip. My college friend was the only one who bothered responding, simply saying she thought we all preferred different types of vacations now. The rest of us had learned our lesson. No amount of beautiful lakefront property was worth being treated like unpaid staff. Next time someone offers us a free place to stay, we'll definitely be reading the fine print more carefully, and there definitely won't be a next time with her. My daughter is 17 and a senior at the local high school. She's always been a good student, keeps her grades up, and has never been in trouble. I raised her to stand up for herself and not let people walk all over her. Maybe that's what got her into this mess, or maybe it's what saved her. It all started about 3 weeks ago. My daughter came home from school looking frustrated, which isn't like her. She's usually pretty upbeat about her day. I asked her what was wrong because she looked upset. She told me about her English teacher who kept making comments about her clothes, even though she wasn't breaking any dress code rules. She said she had checked the handbook twice to make sure. When I asked what kind of comments the teacher was making, my daughter explained that yesterday the teacher said her shirt was too tight, but it wasn't. Then that day the teacher said her skirt was too short, but my daughter had measured it. It went past her fingertips when her arms were at her sides, just like the rules required. I looked at what she was wearing. It was a perfectly normal outfit, a fitted but not tight sweater, and a knee-length skirt. Nothing inappropriate at all. I asked if she had talked to anyone else about this situation. She said a few of her friends mentioned that the teacher does this to certain girls, always the ones she doesn't like for some reason. But the teacher never actually writes them up or sends them to the office. She just makes these comments in front of everyone. I told her to document everything and let me know if it got worse. I figured it was just a teacher having a bad attitude. Nothing more serious than that. The next week things escalated. My daughter came home even more upset. She told me the teacher did it again that day. She had been wearing jeans and a regular t-shirt and there was nothing wrong with her outfit. I asked her what exactly the teacher had said. My daughter explained that the teacher said she was being disruptive with her clothing choices and that she needed to consider how she was representing herself and the school. Then the teacher made her stand up in front of everyone while she pointed out what she thought was wrong with my daughter's outfit. I told her that was harassment and that I was calling the school the next day. My daughter asked me to wait and let her try talking to the teacher first. She didn't want to make things worse. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her handle it. My daughter is mature for her age and I wanted to respect that. But I also told her that if anything else happened, I was getting involved immediately. The conversation she had with her teacher didn't go well. She told me she tried talking to the teacher after class. She asked why the teacher kept singling her out when she was following the dress code. She even brought the handbook to show the exact rules. When I asked what the teacher said, my daughter explained that the teacher got really angry. She said my daughter was being disrespectful and that she knows inappropriate clothing when she sees it. Then the teacher said if my daughter had a problem with her teaching methods, she could find another class. I told her that was enough and I was calling the principal the next day. But before I could make that call, everything exploded. The next morning, my daughter wore the same outfit she'd worn the day before, the jeans and t-shirt that her teacher had criticized. She wanted to make a point that she wasn't doing anything wrong. I was at work when my phone rang. It was the principal. He told me I needed to come to school immediately because there had been an incident involving my daughter. I asked what kind of incident and if she was hurt. He said she was okay now, but there had been an altercation with one of her teachers. He asked if I could get there as soon as possible. I dropped everything and drove to the school. When I got there, my daughter was in the principal's office with a blanket wrapped around her. She was shaking and looked like she'd been crying. I asked what happened and if she was okay. She told me the teacher had lost it completely and grabbed her shirt and ripped it. The principal stepped in to explain what had happened. According to multiple witnesses, my daughter had walked into English class wearing the same outfit from the day before. Her teacher immediately started yelling about defiance and disrespect. When my daughter said that she was following the dress code, the teacher completely snapped. The teacher had grabbed my daughter's shirt at the collar and yanked it so hard that it tore down the front, exposing her. Then she'd started pulling at the shirt, trying to rip it off completely while screaming about appropriate clothing. Several students had immediately jumped up to help. Some girls surrounded my daughter to block her from view, while others physically stepped between her and the teacher. One student had called for security on their phone. By the time adults arrived, the teacher was still trying to get past the students to reach my daughter. I asked where this teacher was now. The principal said she had been removed from the building and they were conducting a full investigation. I told him that wasn't enough and I wanted the police called. She had assaulted my daughter. The principal said he understood my concern, but maybe we should discuss other options first. I told him there were no other options. She had physically attacked a minor and exposed her in front of her classmates. I demanded he call the police right now or I would do it myself. The principal reluctantly agreed to contact law enforcement. Within an hour, officers arrived to take statements from everyone involved. The other students corroborated exactly what happened, and several had even recorded parts of it on their phones. The teacher was arrested that afternoon and charged with assault and child endangerment. The school board met in emergency session and voted to terminate her employment immediately. But the story doesn't end there. During the investigation, it came out that this teacher had a history of targeting female students. Several other parents came forward with similar stories about inappropriate comments and harassment. The district had received complaints before but had only given her verbal warnings. It also turned out that she'd been having financial problems and had apparently been taking out her frustrations on students she perceived as having more than she did. My daughter, who dresses nicely but modestly, had somehow become a target for her displaced anger. The teacher tried to claim that she was just enforcing school policy and that my daughter had been defiant. But with multiple witnesses and video evidence, her story fell apart quickly. She was convicted on both charges. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail and ordered her to pay for my daughter's therapy and medical expenses. She also lost her teaching license permanently. I've been married to my husband for 12 years now, and we have 2 kids who are the light of my life. My son just turned 10 and my daughter is 7. We live a pretty normal life. I work part-time at a local clinic while my husband manages a small construction company. Money's always been tight, but we make it work. My son has always been fascinated with anything scary or spooky. When he was younger, it was dinosaurs and monsters. Now that he's older, he's obsessed with zombies. He watches zombie movies that are appropriate for his age, reads zombie books, and even draws pictures of zombies fighting heroes. So when his birthday came around a few days ago, he had one gift at the top of his list that he'd been talking about for weeks. His friend at school had told him about this video game called Dying Light. From what I understood, it was about surviving in a world full of zombies. My son begged and pleaded for it, explaining how it was exactly what he loved and how all his friends were talking about it. My husband and I did some research. While it was rated for mature audiences, we figured our son was mature enough to handle it. He'd been playing other action games for a while and never had any problems. The birthday party was small but perfect, just family and a couple of close friends. When my son opened the game, his face lit up like Christmas morning. He thanked us about 100 times and immediately wanted to set it up. We let him, figuring it was his special day. For the past few days, he'd been playing it in the living room on our big TV. He seemed to be enjoying it, though I have to admit I didn't pay much attention to what was actually happening in the game. I was usually busy with household chores or helping my daughter with her homework. Today started like any other day. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard my son playing his game in the living room. The sound effects were pretty intense, lots of growling and scary music, but I'd gotten used to it. My daughter had been upstairs in her room playing with her dolls. She came downstairs to ask me for a snack, but instead of coming straight to the kitchen, she wandered into the living room where her brother was playing. I heard her gasp. Then there was this awful scream, and suddenly my son was laughing. My son started teasing her, laughing and pointing out that she had peed herself. He called her a big baby and continued to laugh at her accident. I rushed into the living room and immediately saw what had happened. My poor daughter was standing there with wet pants, tears streaming down her face, while my son continued to chuckle at her misfortune. I asked what was going on and my daughter looked up at me. Through her tears, she told me about the scary monsters on the TV with big teeth and blood that had terrified her. She started crying even harder when she tried to explain what she'd seen. I could see she was genuinely scared. I looked at the TV screen and saw some pretty gruesome zombie creatures that were definitely scarier than anything she'd ever seen before. My son defended himself, saying she had just walked in and gotten scared like a little baby, insisting it was just a game. I told him that was enough and took my daughter upstairs to change her clothes and wash her face. She was still shaking from what she'd seen. I spent about 20 minutes comforting her, reading her a story, and getting her settled down with some juice and crackers in her room. When I came back downstairs, my son was still playing his game like nothing had happened. I didn't really think much more about it. Kids tease each other all the time, and I figured it would blow over. About an hour later, my husband came home from picking up supplies for a job site. He immediately noticed our daughter wasn't her usual cheerful self when he greeted her. My husband asked where our little princess was and mentioned that she seemed upset. I explained that she had gotten scared by her brother's video game and had a little accident, but that she was fine now. My husband asked what kind of accident I meant. I told him she had wet herself when she saw the scary parts of the game and that her brother had laughed at her, but I brushed it off as typical sibling behavior. My husband stopped what he was doing and looked at me seriously. He asked what punishment I had given our son for making fun of her when she was scared. I told him I hadn't punished him because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. My husband's face changed completely. I could see he was getting angry. He asked if I was serious, pointing out that our son had made fun of his little sister when she was terrified and had an accident. He said he couldn't believe I thought that wasn't a big deal. I tried to explain that kids tease each other and it's normal sibling stuff. My husband disagreed. He explained that this wasn't normal teasing, but that our daughter had been genuinely scared and vulnerable. Instead of being a good big brother, our son had humiliated her. He called it bullying and was upset that I had let it slide. I tried to explain that I didn't see it as such a serious issue, but my husband was having none of it. He told me I had put him in an impossible position. If he punished our son hours later, he would look like the bad guy because I had already decided it was okay. Our son would think he was being unfair since mom hadn't cared. I said he was overreacting and that it was just brother-sister stuff. My husband said he couldn't believe I was defending this behavior. He pointed out that our daughter had been scared and humiliated, and I was more concerned about protecting our son than teaching him empathy. The argument continued for another 10 minutes, with my husband explaining how disappointed he was in my reaction. He pointed out that our son needed to learn that making fun of people when they're vulnerable was wrong, especially when it's his little sister who looks up to him. When the day went on and I saw how upset my husband remained, I started to really think about what had happened. I watched my daughter, who was still more clingy than usual, and kept asking if the monsters were real. I realized that maybe I had been too quick to dismiss the situation. That evening, after the kids went to bed, my husband and I had a longer conversation. My husband explained that he needed me to understand why this mattered so much to him. Our son was at an age where he was learning how to treat people, especially people who were smaller or more vulnerable than him. When we didn't address behavior like this, we were teaching him that it was okay to kick people when they were down. I admitted that I just didn't think it was that serious because kids tease each other all the time. My husband explained the difference between playful teasing between equals and making fun of someone who's genuinely scared and can't defend themselves. He reminded me that she was only 7 years old and had been terrified. Instead of comforting her or getting help, our son had chosen to humiliate her. I finally started to see his point. I apologized for not handling the situation better and agreed that we needed to address it with our son together. The next morning, we sat our son down for a serious conversation. My husband told him we needed to talk about what happened when his sister got scared. Our son immediately looked uncomfortable, probably realizing he was in trouble. I explained that we wanted to talk about how he had reacted when his sister got frightened by his game. My husband asked our son how he thought his sister felt when she got scared and wet herself, and then when he laughed at her. Our son thought for a moment and quietly admitted that she probably felt bad and embarrassed. I asked him how he would feel if he was really scared and someone made fun of him instead of helping him. He said he would feel terrible and wouldn't want anyone to laugh at him when he was already upset. My husband explained that this was exactly how his sister had felt. She had been genuinely terrified by something she'd never seen before, and instead of being the protective big brother she needed, he had made fun of her when she was most vulnerable. Our son looked down at his hands and said he understood that he had made his sister feel worse when she was already scared. We asked him what he thought he should do to make things right with his sister. He said he should apologize to her and promised he wouldn't make fun of her again when she was scared. We called his sister downstairs, and our son gave her a sincere apology. He told her he was sorry for making fun of her when she was scared and gave her a big hug. He even apologized for his video game scaring her, which we hadn't asked him to do. We all comforted our daughter together and promised her she was safe, explaining that the monsters in the game weren't real. We told our son that from now on, he could only play the scary game in his room so it wouldn't frighten his sister again. He understood and agreed. To make our daughter feel better, we decided to make her favorite dinner, breakfast for dinner. We made a big batch of pancakes with peanut butter and hot maple syrup, along with a side of hash browns. This made her smile for the first time since the incident. I spent 22 years in the Coast Guard before retiring to civilian life. During my service, I made some solid friendships that lasted long after we hung up our uniforms. One of those friends was my old shipmate who had been a chief petty officer when we served together. We'd kept in touch over the decades, checking in on each other's families and sharing the occasional war story from our days at sea. So when his wedding invitation arrived in the mail earlier this year, my wife and I were genuinely excited for him. After his divorce 5 years back, we thought he'd given up on love entirely. But then he met this wonderful woman who brought the spark back to his eyes. I called him the day after we got the invitation to formally accept, and we sent back the reply card just to make sure there was no confusion. My wife immediately started planning what she'd wear, and we set aside money for the trip since the wedding was a few states over. 2 weeks later, my phone rang, and it was my old shipmate with the strangest request I'd ever heard. He told me he knew it would sound weird, but he needed to ask me a huge favor. When I said sure, he explained that he needed my wife to wear her wedding dress to his wedding. I thought he was joking at first, but he explained the whole situation. His fiance's mother had announced that she planned to wear her own wedding dress to the ceremony. When his fiancé tried to talk her out of it, explaining how inappropriate it was, her mother had thrown a fit and refused to budge. He told me that the mother had said it was her right as the mother of the bride, and nobody could tell her what to wear. His fiancée was devastated, but she didn't want to disinvite her own mother. When I asked what the plan was everyone wearing wedding dresses, he explained that they figured if everyone showed up in white, especially wedding dresses, her mom wouldn't stand out. Maybe she'd realize how ridiculous she looked. My wife overheard the conversation and was immediately on board. She'd kept her wedding dress all these years, and miracle of miracles, could still fit into it. She was practically bouncing with excitement about getting to wear it again. She said this would probably be the only chance she'd ever get to put the thing on again, since it had been hanging in the closet for 15 years. The day of the wedding arrived, and we drove to the venue. My wife looked stunning in her dress, and I wore my best suit. When we walked into the designated room, I saw the sight. There had to be 20 women there, all dressed in white. Some wore actual wedding gowns, others had white cocktail dresses or white suits. The room looked like a bridal shop had exploded. My old shipmate pulled me aside and positioned us near the main entrance where we could see the parking lot. He wanted to watch his future mother-in-law's reaction when she walked in. He pointed out her white sedan pulling up, and out stepped this woman in the most elaborate wedding dress I'd ever seen. It had layers upon layers of tulle, enough beading to blind someone in direct sunlight, and a train that probably cost more than my first car. She walked toward us like she was leading a military assault, chin up, ready for battle. My shipmate greeted her warmly and told her he was so glad she could make it, saying she looked lovely. He held the door open for her and her husband, who looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. She strutted into the room with her nose in the air, clearly expecting to make a grand entrance. Then she stopped dead in her tracks. Her mouth fell open when she took in the sea of white-dressed women scattered around the room. For about 10 seconds, there was complete silence. Then she lost it. She started screaming about how shameful this was, yelling that you cannot wear white to someone else's wedding and that this was her daughter's day. One of the other guests, an older woman in a simple white dress, tried to explain that they were asked to wear white by the bride herself. Karen insisted that was impossible, claiming her daughter would never ask such a thing. Another guest chimed in and said the bride had specifically requested it in a phone call last week. Karen demanded that everyone leave right now, shouting that this was completely inappropriate and asking how we dared try to upstage the bride. Her husband finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. He pointed out to his wife that she was wearing a wedding dress to their daughter's wedding. Karen screamed back that it was different because she was the mother and that she had every right to wear whatever she wanted to her own daughter's wedding. But when someone confirmed that yes, the bride herself had made this request, asking all the female guests to wear white, the fight went out of her like air from a popped balloon. She stood there for a moment, looking around at all of us, realizing that her grand gesture had backfired completely. The music started playing, signaling it was time for the ceremony. We all filed into the chapel, and Karen reluctantly followed. She found a seat in the front row, her elaborate dress now just one of many white gowns in the crowd. The wedding march began, and the bride appeared at the back of the chapel. But instead of traditional white, she wore the most gorgeous red and gold gown I'd ever seen. The colors were rich and vibrant, and she looked absolutely radiant. The contrast between her beautiful colored dress and the room full of white-clad guests was striking and intentional. I looked over at Karen, whose face had gone completely pale. She'd been outmaneuvered, and she knew it. The ceremony was beautiful, but Karen left immediately after the kiss. She didn't even wait for photos or congratulations. Later at the reception, after a few drinks, my shipmate's new wife pulled me and my wife aside. She told us she had to share something with us. She explained that she got this idea from reading stories online about entitled parents trying to upstage weddings. When her mother refused to change her mind about wearing her wedding dress, she decided to beat her at her own game. My wife told her it was brilliant. The bride said that seeing her mother's face when she saw all of us in white was priceless. She added that wearing red felt like the perfect way to reclaim her own wedding day. My shipmate joined us, grinning from ear to ear. He said it was the best wedding revenge ever, pointing out that his mother-in-law couldn't complain about being upstaged when she was trying to do the exact same thing. The reception continued without Karen's dramatic presence, and honestly, the whole event was better for it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.